Hello, everybody. Welcome to Under Thrive Small Business Webinars. Today is Thursday, September 12th, and you are attending one of our weekly webinars created to help New Jersey small business owners start, grow, and thrive. I hope all of you are doing well. Thank you for joining our webinar, and we hope that you gain lots of useful and educational information from today's webinar. My name is Uzma. I'm a consultant here at NJSBDC, which stands for New Jersey Small Business Development Center. We're a network and a statewide program powered by the SBA, which stands for Small Business Administration, and partners to help small businesses in New Jersey with three main things. And those things are no-cost small business consulting, training and events starting at $0, just like this one that you're attending, and exclusive small business resources. The map that you see on the slide here on the right is, of course, the state of New Jersey, divided into all the counties in New Jersey. However, you'll see a small SBDC logo in some of the counties, and that's where our 11 regional centers are located, including our state office. So if you are ever interested in knowing more and learning more about NJSBDC as an organization, if this is your first time hearing about us, please go to NJSBDC.com and learn more. Today's webinar is part of our tech team, is a program offering by the tech team. In the NJSBDC tech team, we offer technical support and guidance to eligible innovators for SBIR, STTR. What those are, we'll explain more. Our presenter will explain more. SBIR STTR grants to fund the R&D towards commercialization of tech innovations. Similarly to our general services, our tech team provides no-cost pitch to proposal consulting, events also, just like this one, and other tech resources. Our SBDC tech team and NJSBDC tech team is not located throughout the state. It is located at the state office. And to learn more about our tech team, you can go to njsbdc.com/tech team. Go ahead in the chat and let us know where you are joining us from, what you do, what your company is about, anything you want to share. If you're a first-time entrepreneur, if you have been doing this for a long time, and let us know where you're joining us from. Let's see, let's move on to the agenda. We have a couple of headlines to share with you. Then we have our presentation from our speaker and then a Q&A session. Small business headlines of the week. We have at least 5 to share. I'll go through them very, very quickly. The links will be shared in the chat by our webinar assistant, and you can click on them and save them. All right, first is from NJBIA. Montclair State and Rutgers hosting 2024 Small Business Summit happening on October 24th at the Montclair State University. And this is, of course, a Small Business Summit happening next month. Opportunities for entrepreneurs all over New Jersey to make connections and learn from successful innovators and strategies. This is in person from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. on October 24th. It is co-hosted by Rutgers University as well as the Feliciano Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Montclair State. 300 expected attendees. If you'd like to register, go here at this link and register. There is sponsorship opportunities as well, and you can click here. All right, next is from SBA, Small Business Administration, a great resource for small business owners in New Jersey and elsewhere to keep in their loop for resources. SBA Administrator Guzman opens application window for lenders filling gaps in credit markets. Non-bank licenses will enable SBA loan guarantees to spur lending in underserved communities and for green investments. All right, and let's see, these are the application process and instructions. They're listed here. The first session for prospective SBLCs is Thursday, September 12th, which is actually today, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And second session is, I believe, for happening on September 24th. All right, so there's more other dates also provided, other links. You can click on those when you go to this website. Next is from America's Seed Fund, which is a 2024 Innovation Ecosystem Summit. Of course, this is happening. This is I'm blanking on the word, but excuse me, U.S. Small Business Administration is the provider of this summit. November 14th to 15th, it is virtual. Registration will open soon. News for what is new for 2024, what to expect. Two days of virtual collaboration. Let's see, who should attend? Accelerators, incubators, tech-based economic development organizations, entrepreneurs, investors, labs, etc. So if this is something that is interesting to you, please register. 2024 I-Corps annual meeting. Meeting overview. This is happening, I believe, in person. Let's see, where is it? Yep. In person. There is a registration link provided. These are all the excuse me, speakers. We have some of our partners who will be attending. We will be in attendance as well, hopefully. This is to connect with mentors and industry leaders, celebrate and grow. Who should attend? If you're a member of the I-Corps community, if you're a researcher and entrepreneur who are new to I-Corps, college and university faculty, supporters, innovation organizations, and innovators in the community who are developing startups and ventures. And last is from Tech Connect 2024 SBIR STTR Fall Innovation Conference happening in December in Austin, Texas. And these are the links. There is a link to join and register. That is all from the headlines. We're going through these very quickly. Things to keep in mind if you have any questions that we are addressing at the end in the Q&A session, please put them in the Q&A box. It should be right next to the chat box at the Zoom bar. If it's not, it should be in the settings. Oops. If you would like to receive the slides from the presenter, then please complete a brief survey and you'll receive the Google Slides for it. And the webinar is being recorded from beginning to end, and the link will be shared on where it is available. It is usually available on our YouTube channel. All right, so here's our presenter, Jerry Hollister, Executive Consultant and co-owner of BBCetc. And you are in for the topic NSF SBIR CTR overview, securing funding for national health and defense. So I'd like to welcome Jerry. Jerry, thank you so much for doing this for us. I will stop sharing. The stage is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Uzma. It's good to be here with you all. Just got to pull this thing up, get the right screen in front of me so I can navigate correctly. So bear with me just a second, and we should be one more click. There we can get the laser pointer working. Seeing the laser pointer moving around?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, well, great. Well, it's good to be with you all today, and we're going to talk about the National Science Foundation program, the SBIR STTR program, and we'll do a quick overview of SBIR generally. Our firm, we work across the country. We specialize in SBIR STTR, and if you're used to working with the Department of Defense, they like to pronounce acronyms, so they'll say SBIR SITR, but it's the same program. SBIR, they pronounce SBIR. STTR, they pronounce SITR. But we are specialists in these programs. We also work in adjacent federal funded R&D programs such as CDMRP, BARDA, long-range BAAs, broad agency announcements. So we specialize really in helping early stage technology companies gain federal funding and then move their technology forward and then towards commercialization. And so we partner with organizations like the New Jersey SBDC all across the country. A little bit about myself personally. I started my career as a naval officer. While I was on active duty, I became a warranted contracting officer for the Department of Defense. And so I learned government contracts from the government side. About 15, almost 20 years ago now, I joined a small business in my home state of Michigan that was developing superconducting accelerators. It was a spin out from one of the big national accelerator labs. And I helped that company for about a decade, a little over a decade, full time. with their SBIR program. It was a very early stage company, and we won a number of SBIRs, about 40 some SBIRs during the decade that I ran the program, and then helped it transition to be a commercially viable company, which it is today. I still am on their board of directors. I helped them also pull in about 30 million in what's known as phase 3, which is commercial sales to the federal government. And so I've been through the process on both sides. I was a government contracting officer years ago, and then I was in the small business side, winning SBIR awards and using that funding to develop technology that then could be transitioned to commercial sales. And I joined BBCetc in 2017, so it's 7 years now. And I've helped hundreds of companies across the country and across several different agencies win SBIR, and kind of help them learn from my mistakes when I was in small business. And that's really, what today is designed for, is for you to learn from some of the mistakes that I've made so you don't have to make them. I do serve as a reviewer for several agencies, SBIR agencies, including NSF, the National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, NOAA, and USDA. So that's a little bit about my background. So quick level set on SBIR STTR program. What is it? What's the goal of these two programs? What's the differences between these programs? What do I need to do to be eligible for these programs? So SBIR STTR, they are really designed to develop products. They are not basic research. They are product development programs. And so at the end of the day, they are trying to spin out technology from universities or national labs with the intention of having a product or service that solves an important problem in society. So it's a job creation program in their essence. SBIR, or SBIR, stands for Small Business Innovation Research. STTR, Small Business Technology Transfer. They are mandated by Congress. So Congress said if an agency has a $100 million R&D budget, then or greater, then they must participate in SBIR, which is the SBIR program. And what happens is, out of that, let's say it's $100 million, they have to cut out 3.2% of that budget and put it in this bucket of money called SBIR or SBIR. If they're $1 billion or more, then they have to take out that 3.2% for SBIR, put it in that first bucket, and then take an additional 0.45% of that billion plus and put it in a second bucket called STTR. So they are completely carved out of existing budgets. And so the programs do not cost the federal government any money because they're just carved out of existing budgets. So if these programs went away, which we hope they don't, but if they did, there would be no savings, like taxpayers wouldn't pay any less. So why SBIR STTR? So the goal of the program is to bridge the valley of death. Okay, so tons of great ideas coming out of basic research, both at the federal labs, universities, and innovators. Just straight out innovators that have these great ideas, but they're trying to then develop a product, and that takes money, and it takes effort, and it takes expertise. And so often what happens is, these federally funded research programs, they're not designed to develop products. They're designed to advance science. National Science Foundation, for example, their whole mandate is advance knowledge. To then take that knowledge and make it into a usable product takes dollars. The challenge is that investors aren't going to touch these great ideas. They want to see the product's already developed, but innovators, they're kind of stuck because they don't have the money to develop a product, so they can't attract this investor money. So there's this valley of death where it's kind of chicken and the egg, right? Well, they need the money to develop the product, but you can't get the money until you develop the product, so you get stuck. SBIR STTR is designed to bridge that gap and provide that early stage funding to develop and de-risk the product to the point where it's minimally viable and then can attract outside investment. That's the whole point of it. Now, it's a 3-phase program, and the first phase is a proof of concept study. This is and it varies between 6 and 12 months depending on the agency. It's usually around $250,000. Now they're starting to bump up a little bit more with inflation, and the budgets are expanded. So, but rough number, $250,000 and 6 to 12 months. And the idea is that you prove the concept will work. You're not going to try to, develop your whole MVP. You're just going to show that this new idea is feasible. It will work at a very basic level. And then, so that's phase 1. And then you apply for phase 2 funding. And phase 2, once you win phase 2, assuming that it worked in phase 1 and you apply to phase 2 and get phase 2 funding, then the goal is to provide or to develop your MVP. So the goal is at the end of phase 2 that you've got this MVP that is minimally viable and that you can start selling it. And that's really the goal. Now, be aware that there is a gap of time and funding between phase 1 and phase 2. Usually this is a gap of 4 to 6 months. So you need to be aware of that. But overall, remember those 2 buckets, the SBIR or the STTR, those fund the first 2 phases, but only the first 2. Phase 3 is known as the commercialization phase, and that's where the company is now selling this MVP, whether it's to the federal government or to commercial. And that's the 3rd phase. So no funding for the SBIR phase 3 comes from those 2 buckets. It has to come from some other source. Now, what do you need? So the basic requirements for these 2 programs: the company has to be for profit. It has to be U.S. owned and controlled, meaning that more than 50% of the owners, the individual owners, are U.S. citizens or permanent residents, green card holders. The company has to be less than 500 employees, located in the United States, and all the R&D done in the United States. You can't go do the work in Europe or somewhere else. You have to do the work in the United States. The company needs to have research space adequate for the research being proposed, which can vary greatly depending on the research. The company I worked for, superconducting accelerator, we just to turn on the accelerator, we needed high power amplifiers, we needed cryogenics, we needed radiation shielding. There was a ton of infrastructure that was needed just to turn on the machine. If your company happens to be developing software, maybe all you need is a high-speed internet connection and a server, or maybe not even a server if you're doing edge computing or cloud computing. So it really depends, but you're going to have research space under your control. And there's several registrations required. Now let's talk about the difference between SBIR and STTR. So they're very similar. SBIR came first. It was 42 years ago. STTR came 10 years later in 1992. And the big difference between the two is the relationship with a not-for-profit research institute. Now, generally, this not-for-profit research institute is a university, but it could be a private research institute that's not profit. And there are several of those across the country. Or it could be a national lab. But this research institute is required at STTR. You have to have a research institute as a partner. SBIR allows it, but does not require it. So that's the big difference. Now, there's budget requirements for each of these different programs. So under SBIR, the company must do at least 67.0%, not 2/3, but 67.0% of the budget has to go to the company, meaning they can only outsource to a subcontractor or a collaborator or a consultant up to 33.0% in phase 1. In phase 2, it's 50-50. For STTR, on the other hand, the company must do at minimum of 40% of the effort, meaning the budget, and the collaborator research institute must do at least 30%. That leaves 30% in the middle that can essentially be any combination. 50-50, 40-60, 70-30, 40-30-30, 40-35-25. I mean, there's a variety of different, and that's true for both phase 1 and phase 2, those percentages. But the main research institute must get at least 30%. Now, the last difference is between where the principal investigator is employed. Under SBIR rules, the principal investigator must be at least 51% employed by the small business. That doesn't mean they have to spend 51% of their time on the project. It means they have to be employed at least 51% of their time. And that's just the requirement, period. There's no exceptions. That's the law. And so that's SBIR. As TTR, the principal investigator could be with the small business at least 51% of their time, or they could be at the research institute. So that means they could be still employed primarily at the university or at, say, a national lab and not leave their role there, as long as they give a minimum effort, which is typically 10%. It varies by agency, but as long as they give their effort on the project. So that's the difference between SBIR and STTR. Now, at NSF, they do not allow this exception for the principal investigator to be employed at the research partner. So in other words, at NSF, the principal investigator rules are the same for both SBIR and STTR, meaning that the PI must be employed by the small business at least 51% of their time. And at NSF, the minimum research effort is 1 month for every 6 months, or 16.67% of their time must be spent on the project being proposed. Now, if you're going to be working with a university, either under SBIR or STTR, there's 2 offices that you're going to be working with, and they have different roles and different functions, and it's important to differentiate between the 2. The first is the tech transfer office. This is the office whose job it is, their role at the university is to spin out technology, license this technology, and generate revenue for the university. So they're going to be the people that have all the invention disclosures. They're going to be the ones that will have the conflict of interest policy, and whether or not the university happens to allow professors to moonlight or outside consulting opportunities. And they're the ones that will license the technology and negotiate the license agreements. So you're going to have to talk with them early if you're working with a university, because if there's intellectual property that you need to get access to, you're going to have to deal with the tech transfer office to get some sort of license agreement with them to develop technology that's owned by the university. Once you put somebody on the budget, the only group, and it's typically called the Sponsored Research Office or the Office of Sponsored Programs. The names of these two offices can vary. It's usually Tech Transfer Office, but some universities have a different name. But their functions are the same. And the Sponsored Research Office is the organization at the university that can commit the university or national lab to do work under a project. And so a professor cannot write a letter of support saying, hey, I'm going to work on that project. They don't have the authority to do that. You have to go through the Sponsored Research Office. They are the ones that are going to generate all the paperwork that's required for a proposal. And that paperwork includes like an agreement, intellectual property agreement, not the license itself, but how you're going to share intellectual property, budget justification, all the other paperwork, biosketches, all that kind of stuff that's required. The Sponsored Research Office will generate all that. And so it's important to know the difference between those two offices. Now, how do you choose between SBIR and STTR? Really comes down to a resource allocation or a resource inventory. Remember, not all 11 agencies participate in STTR, only 6 of the agencies. So if you're looking at some of the smaller agencies, they don't offer STTR, so there's no choice. You have to do SBIR. Not all of the topics are off. Let's say at, in particular, like DoD, they have SBIR topics and STTR topics. And sometimes they're offered in both, but not always. And so you got to pay attention. But assuming that the topic that you're developing is offered by this agency in both SBIR and STTR, then the best thing is just conduct an inventory. What do we have in-house? What do we need to outsource? What's the budget that we, what's that? What are those things that we need to outsource? Let's say a facility or maybe some expertise. We have to hire consultants or hire a professor. If that's going to cost more than 33.0%, then you're kind of forced over to STTR. If it's less than that, then you got some choices. And it's always good to ask the agency as well, because sometimes they'll give you a hint as to what to do. I actually had a program director at Department of Energy once say, you guys do great work. You do a lot of SBIR. You may want to consider STTR. So we did, and we won a bunch of STTR. This is just a summary slide that shows the differences of SBIR, the requirements, and STTR. There's no new information on this slide, but it's a good summary. All right, how do you figure out between these different agencies? I know we're going to talk about NSF, but just quickly, there are 11 agencies. Those are the logos. This is the breakdown from a couple of years ago of the budget. You can see that the big agencies, DoD is half of the whole program, 4.4 billion in 22, and DoD was 2.2 of that. So they were half the program. Health and Human Services, which is mostly NIH, is another little over a quarter of the program. Then the other big ones, Energy, National Science Foundation, NASA, and USDA. Those are the six agencies that participate in both SBIR and STTR. And then the SBIR only agencies are the smaller ones, and that's Homeland Security, Transportation, Department of Ed. Commerce, Department of Commerce has both the NOAA and the NIST program, and then pulling up the rear, EPA. Now I'm differentiating between the agencies that will award their SBIR awards as a grant in orange. So some of these agencies will issue a grant agreement, and some will issue a contract. And there are some differences there. There's a lot of other agency differences between funding amounts and when their things are due, and all sorts of different, how you get paid and what your deliverables are. The big difference between contracting agencies, you can break down the differences between the contracting and the granting agencies. And the big difference is who comes up with the topic area. So at the contracting agency, the agency itself, DoD is a great example, they come up with the requirements and they will write a very specific topic for this mission-driven requirement. Example, the M1 Abrams program wants a new sensor for their M1 Abrams. So they put a topic out and this new sensor has to do A, B, C, and D. It's got to fit in a certain spot, and it's got to draw a certain, amount of current, or no more than a certain amount of current. And it's got to be able to detect a bunch of different stuff. So they're very specific for a very specific mission need. And then the whole point of that is that they're going to have deliverables about it. It's got to meet certain deliverables, and that's how you get paid along the way. And then eventually they want to acquire that sensor. And so that's what's known as a phase 3 opportunity. And because SBIR, STTR is a competitive process, the acquisition regulations are met, the competition requirements are met, and the company can receive a sole source award in perpetuity as long as they want or need that sensor. And so there's a real value to the company when they develop a technology for a contracting agency in most cases. Granting agencies, on the other hand, they don't say we need a sensor that can do A, B, C, and D and fit in a certain spot and go on an M1 Abrams and be hardened against, artillery shells or whatever. They just say, we need sensor technology. You tell us what the application is. You tell us, applicant, who's going to buy this and who cares. And so it's up to you, the applicant, to come up with a topic, come up with a problem statement, come up with a solution, this new innovative solution that you have. And so they allow these broad topics, and the budget's much more flexible. How you get paid is usually on a best effort. There's no deliverables other than typically a final report. And so it's easier in one level to execute on a grant versus a contract, because you don't have all these deliverable requirements. On the other hand, it's harder to put together a proposal because you have to define both the problem and the solution, and in a compelling way that indicates to the agency that, yeah, this is a real agency mission to try to solve this problem that this company has articulated. But these granting agencies will never buy your product. So don't expect NSF to be a customer at the end of phase 2. They're just not going to be. All right, a few more requirements, and that is how do you even figure out where to find all these? Go to sbir.gov. This links to all of the 11 agencies. You can look under the section here. And it will take you over to the past awards. There's a place where you can put in keywords, and if you put in a keyword, let's say lasers or whatever you're developing, put in some keywords, and it'll spit out a bunch of previous awards, and then you can filter the results and figure out whether this agency is really, are they still interested? Have they funded something recently in this technology area? And it's worth doing this because a lot of the smaller agencies you might not think about, they may be interested. And just remember, DoD is practically interested in everything. So even if you got something that you didn't think might be a defense application, there may be an application. Let me say a couple things about registrations. The big ones, You need a SAM, which is a System for Award Management, active to be able to apply to SBIR STTR. To get a SAM registration, you need an EIN, which is your tax ID from the IRS. And then you're also going to need an SBIR.gov registration. Then there's agency-specific registrations. We're talking about NSF, so they also require research.gov. I'll just say here, there's links in here to go to the, like this is for the EIN. This typically takes 1 to 2 days. If you applied today, you would probably have it tomorrow, but if not, by Monday. So this is a pretty quick turnaround. All of these are free. SAM.gov, once you have an EIN and a company bank account, you can apply. You go to SAM.gov. Make sure that these are all official government websites, because there's lots of scammers out there. So once you just go to the get started, you'll see these different spots, and you're not active until when you sign in, it says you have 1 active registration. If it still says 0, then you're not active and you're not going to be able to apply. So it's confusing. You're going to get some emails. Sometimes like when you get a UEI, the unique entity identifier, it's going to say your UEI is now active. That doesn't mean SAM.gov is active. It just means you've been issued a UEI. And that's one of the first steps. So you got to make sure that it says a 1 right here. And the other thing is, if you don't have a due date of when the registration has to be renewed on an annual basis. So if you don't have a renewal date, then you're not active. And so just be aware. Federal Support Desk, FSD, is where you can get support. One thing I would say is, if you run into some problem and you contact FSD, they will create what they call a trouble ticket. And then if you don't hear from them for a couple of days, get frustrated, and submit a new trouble ticket, that will kick the other one out, and you go back to the end of the line. So just be patient and wait. Don't create multiple tickets, because they will only service the most recent one. So don't lose your place in line by getting impatient. Let's see. The other thing you can do is you can contact the Apex accelerators. Well, we partner with the Apex accelerators across the country. These are no cost to you. This is a group of organizations funded by the federal government. Their mission is to help small businesses work with the federal government, and they're very good at giving guidance on SAM.gov. SBIR.gov, you're also required to register there. You will need a UEI for that. But you can get the UEI once you start the SAM registration. You get the UEI within a few days. So that won't take you long. But once you do, then you can go in, log in to register, and it will spit out a registration. You will want to print out the PDF of your registration. It will also give you your SBC control number, small business concern control number. So you'll need that number and the PDF of that certificate. The last one for NSF is research.gov. They give you a bunch of warnings, and because just be aware that sometimes they take research.gov offline for like software updates or whatever, system updates. So they're going to give you warnings as to when it's going to be out of service. Oftentimes it's right before a deadline, so be aware. But to register, you just go up here to register. It's quick. It'll take you about 5 minutes. Some tips. When you're doing these registrations, you need to give yourself at least 8 weeks. None of these are difficult. None of these are complicated. None of these will cost you anything. So if you get to some site that says you have to pay, then do not go there. Just close your browser, clear your cache, and start from scratch. And, so if you do a Google search for any of these, what will always happen is you'll see something like there used to be a website called sam.gov.com, and it looked almost identical to sam.gov. You need to see the little flag at the top that says official U.S. government website. And so make sure you're there. So don't pay for any of these. Start at least 8 weeks. Once you start it, it'll just kind of run in the background. If they need some additional information, they'll contact you. But it just takes some time for them to get activated. Make sure to update this annually, the SAM registration. And the other thing I would recommend is have a central login place so that all of your questions or all the roles, because you're going to have several registrations, you're going to have, sign-ins, are you using an email? Are you using a username, passwords, roles, responsibilities, all that. Have a central place where that can be accessed by the whole team, so that you don't run into a situation where the only one person has access. Sadly, we just learned of a client who the principal investigator kind of held all the keys and all of this stuff and didn't have a central location like this and passed away suddenly. And now the whole team is scrambling, trying to figure out how to get access to all their registrations and their SAM and all that. So make sure that you share that information. Okay, that's kind of the big picture of SBIR STTR. Now, the rest of today, we're going to talk about NSF. So, mission of NSF: promote science. Shocking, that's in their name. Advance the national health, prosperity, and secure the national defense. So it's very broad. They have 30 topical areas. If it doesn't fit into one of these 30 topical areas, they also have a 31st one called Other, which basically means if it's science related and you've got a new technology, they will consider it. Their website is seedfund.nsf.gov. If you're looking for the different topics, you go to the portfolio tab, and it shows you this kind of chart. It's a grid of all the different ones. If you click on one, like I clicked on energy technologies, it gives you the subtopic descriptions, and it tells you who's managing that particular topical area, the program director, and you can get in touch with them through there. So the website overall, again, if you want to get started, you're going to go down here to the Get Started tab. And the solicitations that are out right now, there are 3 solicitations. There's a solicitation it's a combined SBIR STTR solicitation for phase 1. The link is right here. There's a combined SBIR STTR for phase 2 applications. And there's also, they have a fast track. We're not going to get into too much detail about fast track, but that's basically one proposal that combines a phase 1 and phase 2 application in one application, so that the time in between, remember I mentioned there was this gap in funding and time. This would reduce that significantly down to practically 0. There's still some reviews that have to be done, but you don't have to reapply in this case at Fast Track. And there's a separate solicitation for that program. Proposals are submitted in what's known as submission windows. So at NSF, you can apply at any time. And what they do is they use the windows as basically their deadlines, where once a window closes, they collect all the proposals that have come in, and then they start the review process. So there's different requirements for the different programs. For phase 1, basically, if you're a SBIR eligible, then you're going to be fine. You have to get a project pitch approved and receive an invitation to submit a full proposal, but that's the only real requirement outside of being SBIR eligible that there is for phase 1 at NSF. For the fast track program, there's some additional requirements for the company. The company must have what's known as NSF lineage, meaning that the team and the company, somebody on the team, has had an NSF award, typical, like a typical basic research award to a university within the past 5 years. Somebody on the team also has to have gone through either a formal customer development training, typically like the I-Corps program, but it could be like an accelerator program that's similar to I-Corps. But they have to have that on their. Somebody on the team has gone through that within the past 2 years, and then the company can't. None of the key persons being proposed on the proposal can be contingent hires. In other words, they have to have everybody already on board, employed at the time of application. Whereas for phase one, you could have people that are contingent hires. If you get the money, the phase one, then they agree to come on board. But if you don't get the money, they're not leaving their current job. That works for phase one. But for a fast track program, you can't do that. You have to have everybody on board. And then they also have a very specific timeline of once you get your fast track pitch approved, you have to submit it right away within 4 months. Oh, sorry. For phase two at NSF, only phase one awardees at NSF are eligible to apply to a phase two. And the other requirement is a phase one awardee, they get 24 months, 2 years to the date from when they got their phase one award. So if they got their phase one award on April 15th of 2024, they'd have till April 15th of 2026 to submit a full phase two proposal. The funding amounts at NSF, phase one is $305,000. The duration can be anywhere between minimum of 6 months, all the way up to 18 months. Any integer number of months, we would recommend 12 to 18. The phase two is 1.25 million and 24 months. The fast track is combined 1.555 million and between 24 and 36 months. And then there are some matching programs I'll talk about in a minute. And the big one is the phase 2B, and that's up to $500,000, and that can add 24 months to the phase two program. You have to be a phase two awardee to get phase 2B. What are some of these funding opportunities? Supplemental, again, have to be in phase two to be able to be eligible for these. Phase 2B is basically a matching program. If the company can raise money from outside investment, then NSF will match $1 to every $2 raised, up to $500,000 maximum. So that means if the company raises $1 million, then they can get an additional $500,000 from NSF. And that's a great program. TECP, which is Technology Enhancement for Commercial Partnerships. If you're in phase two and you're working with a commercial partner, maybe doing a pilot site or something, you can get up to an additional 20% or $250,000. You have to apply, and it can extend your program up to 6 months. There's some other smaller ones. One that they like us to promote is community college teams. So if you're working with a community college in phase two, you can get an additional $40,000, of which $30,000 has to go to the community college. But again, you apply for these. These are all phase two programs, and so let's add it all up. Phase one can be up to 12. It could go all the way out to 18 months, but usually typically a year. There's a gap. Phase two is 1.25 million. If you added in the phase two CC, you keep adding these. TECP can extend the time and add 250,000. And then if you get that phase 2B, you raise $1 million and get another $500,000. This is over $2 million. It's almost $2.5 million. So there's real money there. If you're interested in these supplemental funding, it's right on the web page. You can look under phase two applicant or phase two awardees, and then there's a section called supplemental funding. Now, what makes NSF different? So big picture, NSF is a granting agency, meaning you, the investigator, initiate the project. You say, here's the problem that's in society. Here's our new innovative solution. This is what's going to make it unique and push forward the state of the art. And you're going to get a peer review from the NSF, and that's going to be helpful for you whether you're awarded or not. NSF offers both SBIR and STTR. Typical success rate for phase one is about 10 to 15% at NSF, and phase two's 40 to 50% of the phase ones will make it to phase two. They fund about 400 companies per year. We've already kind of talked about these submission windows that happen on a rolling basis, and you have to get a project pitch approved. And we're going to talk about the project pitch in a second. I mentioned this already. The principal investigator rules at NSF, they're the same for both SBIR and STTR. Principal investigator has to be employed by the small business at least 51% of their time, period, end of discussion. There can be co-principal investigators on STTR. There is not a co-PI on SBIR. Under STTR, there's one required, and this is the lead person at the research institute. So what are the limitations? For SBIR, the PI can only be, the company PI can only be on one NSF award at any time. It can be either an SBIR or STTR. The STTR, the co-PI from the Research Institute can serve on as many proposals as they want, as long as they're a co-PI. But NSF doesn't restrict that. So what does NSF fund? So we're going to look specific. They want to see that the current state of the art is being pushed forward, and they want to see significant technical hurdles, meaning you can honestly say that your technology is novel, proprietary, unprecedented, groundbreaking, pioneering, words like that. You've got high technical risk, and there's already been some initial development, but there's still a lot to still prove that this new science will work and solve this problem. There needs to have a significant commercial opportunity. In other words, that you've already gone out and done some product market fit. You've validated that with customers that are willing to pay that, yes, this problem exists, and if you can solve it in this way, they'd be interested. They want to see technologies that can disrupt the current state of the art. In other words, think about, like, I'm going to date myself here, but when I was a kid, there was records, vinyl records, LPs, 33 and 45s. I'm not old enough to know the 78s, but there was vinyl. Those went to cassette tapes, and then 8-tracks and cassettes, and then there was CDs. Those were all incremental. Those were all evolutionary. They didn't really change the music industry. The music industry adopted, but it didn't radically change. What radically changed the music industry was streaming. And so it's now very different than it used to be. Record labels got all disrupted. It was very disruptive technology. They want to see disruptive technology, not necessarily evolutionary. And they want to see that your new technology will present a competitive barrier. In other words, streaming was very different than CDs. And so it created a barrier to entry. And so they want to see revolutionary, not evolutionary. So this is how NSF defines being a good fit at NSF. Need to have significant technical R&D needed to overcome these technical hurdles that still exist. You've got a unique and defensible innovation, meaning that you could patent it or copyright it in the future. You could also protect it through trade secret, but it's going to be hard for other people to replicate what you're doing. Your company is structured and staffed for aggressive, focused commercialization. What does that mean? That means they're not going to fund a professor that's moonlighting. They want to see that the team is set up, that they're all in on making this product work. And so they want to see that. And that they want to see that you've already done significant customer validation. You've figured out there's a product market fit. You've validated it with customers, not just one, but several dozens. Now, what does NSF not fund? The SBIR program does not fund basic research. NSF does, but the SBIR program at NSF does not fund basic research. Okay, they will not fund evolutionary incremental improvements to existing products. They're just not going to do it. And so, 10 years ago, if you said AI or machine learning or one of these artificial intelligence techniques, you were pretty much guaranteed that you were innovative and pushing forward the state of the art. Today, not as true. You're going to have to show how your AI application is going to push forward the state of the art and is not just evolutionary, building on what's already existing in the AI world. They're not going to do market studies, and they're not going to fund projects that don't have any commercial success. They may be, a really cool product, but if nobody's willing to buy it, then they're not going to fund it. The other way to think about this is there's two kinds of technical problems, and both a science problem and an engineering problem, they can be really technically challenging. They could be wicked expensive. It doesn't mean that they're simple, but a science problem is different in its essence, because a science problem, by definition, is not the science is not generally accepted. It's not the technologies, the processes, the techniques, the equations, reaction, whatever it is that you're developing is not proven or not generally accepted. And the risk of this new science is it may not work. Even if you have the world's experts working on it, it might not work. And so this is what NSF likes to fund in phase one. They want to see a science problem that's really risky and it just may not work. And so an engineering problem, on the other hand, the techniques, the processes, the equations, the reactions, formulas, all that, they're generally accepted. And so the risk of these is, can you organize and marshal the right resources, both expertise and infrastructure resources, to solve this problem? Essentially, it's a plug and chug, but it still could be a really wicked expensive plugging and chugging, because you have to pull in, these really expensive experts, and the infrastructure may be really cost prohibitive, but it's still an engineering problem. It's a plug and chug. We already know it works. It's just, can we get the right people and can we get the right resources together? That's what the risk is for engineering problems. And that's what NSF likes to see in phase two. So as you're writing and as you're thinking about your NSF proposal, make sure to formulate your phase one proposal as a science problem, and then all the engineering problems can wait for phase two. So who does the NSF program, SBIR program? 94% of the awardees have less than 10 employees. So very early stage, very small. History, only over 90% have never had any SBIR phase 2 from any agency. So 80% of them are formed within the last 5 years, and 62% of last year awardees were new to NSF. So what does NSF look for? Very early stage, small companies just getting started, got this new transformational technology. That's who they're looking for. Then the team is set up trying to commercialize this new technology. All right, so how do you put together a project pitch? Whoops. So go to the seedfund.nsf.gov, go to the how does it work, and then there's a thing here that says project pitch. So there are rules about it. One project pitch at a time. You can only have one. So if you submit a pitch and it's going to take about 4 weeks to hear back from NSF, they give themselves up to 4 weeks. Sometimes people hear like immediately. That doesn't mean that they're more excited. It just means you happen to catch the program director at his or her desk. But you can't put in one and then go, well, I got another great idea. Let me put in another one. You can only have one at any time. You can only put one in per quarter. So if you put it in, and the quarters are just the regular quarters, right? January 1st to March 31st, and et cetera. So if you put one in now, September, today's the 12th, and it gets you hear back and they say no, then well, you could start another one in October 1st. But if you put one in on October 1st and they say no, then you're going to have to wait until January 1st. So one pitch per quarter. Once you get a pitch approved, then you have to submit a proposal. You can't keep putting in more pitches. You can only have one. And then you have to wait until that pitch. So if you submit a pitch and it's approved, then you submit a proposal and you're waiting, and usually you'll wait 6 months or so before you hear, then you can't put another pitch in until that full proposal is either accepted or rejected. And if they accept it, then you're, great, wonderful, you're in phase 1. Then, you're going to apply to phase 2. You can only have one proposal at NSF at any time. So once you get that in there and once it's in the system, until you're done with phase 2, and then if you extend it with phase 2B, this could be several years, 6, 7 years. You can only have one. Then after that, you could try another pitch. Okay, what are you going to put in your project pitch? There's 4 sections of the project pitch. The first 2 are the important ones. Frankly, they're not going to reject your pitch because of the market opportunity or the company team. They might, but it's very, very rare. 98% of them get rejected because the technology or the objectives are not clearly stated. So, and they have these limits on how long they can be. And they're 3,500 characters, including spaces. So the first section is how you're going to describe this new innovation. What is new? What's unproven? What's pushing forward the state of the art? Then your second section is the technical objectives, meaning what are the goals? A goal, technical objective is simply a goal. What goal do you need to reach with specific measures of success to prove feasibility? Okay, we got this one science problem. If we can get past that, then we know the rest of it's just engineering issues. So a lot of times there's only one technical objective because there's only one science problem to prove. Sometimes there's 2. Rarely is there more than 2 technical objectives because that basically says you got more than 2 science problems, which makes it really, really risky. So you're trying to define what you need to, the goal that you need to reach to prove feasibility and then move to phase 2 in the future. Market opportunity, only 1,750 characters. And this is, you're just going to show yeah, we've talked to a few customers. We know that there's this product or this gap in the marketplace, and people are willing to buy it. If it works, then they're willing to buy it. And then company team, you're going to describe the company and how the reason why you want to, take this to the market. So those are the things. Now, if you're going to apply to the fast track program, you have all those 4 sections, and then there's a couple other sections. You're going to have to describe your NSF lineage because it's required, and you're going to have to describe your customer discovery training because that's required. And then you're going to have to check yes or no as to whether the team is complete at the time of proposal submission. So remember, you can submit a pitch, and the people could still not be on staff. But at the time that you apply, and you only get 4 months, you're going to have all those key persons on staff at that time. So you're either saying yes, they will be on staff at that time, or no, they're not. So then once you get that all kind of drafted up, usually in Word, and you kind of work on it and do all that, then you're going to cut and paste, plug it into, you're going to go to the website, click on submit a pitch. You just plug into the web page there, and it'll tell you how many characters you are and all that. And you're going to answer a few questions and then hit submit. You will get a confirmation email that your pitch was submitted. It'll give you a number, and then it'll say somebody will get back to you within 4 weeks. What happens? They're either going to come back. So for phase 1, if you just applied for a regular pitch, not a fast track pitch, then you're either going to get a yes, congratulations, you now get the next 2 submission windows to submit a full proposal. Now, today, the next 2 submission windows are September 18th, which is next Wednesday. And then the next one after that is November 6th. So that's not very long. It's like 7-8 weeks from now. If your pitch gets approved on September 19th, then you get that window, which would be November 6th, and the next one, which would be March the 5th, 2025. So that's like 4 months. So you got to kind of time when you submit your pitch so that you don't get your pitch approved right at the end of the submission window, because you only get 2 submission windows. The one that the pitch was approved in and the next one. So either you get a yes, and then you get 2 submission windows to submit your full proposal. You get a no, and then you can try again in the next quarter. Or they can come back and say, we need more information, and they'll tell you what they're looking for. But then after that, so you submit more information, you're going to say yep or no. For fast track, if they say yes, then you get 4 months to submit a proposal, regardless of when it is, not dependent on the windows. Okay. They can also say, yeah, this is a fit, but you don't meet the fast track eligibility requirements, but you can submit a regular phase 1 proposal. So you wouldn't get the fast track proposal, but you can submit a phase 1. They can say more information is needed, or they can say no, and in which case you could try again the next quarter. If you already have a pitch approved, but you really want to do fast track, because they just introduced this recently, you would have to withdraw that current project pitch, which is only good for phase 1, and you'd have to apply for a fast track project pitch. Okay, after you get this invitation to submit, then you're going to have several different things that you're going to want to do. You're going to want to collect all the documents that you're going to need, and you're going to make sure to confirm that your registration is active, both your sam.gov, it's going to be active for another few months, And your SBIR, it never expires. Research.gov doesn't expire, but you're going to want to make sure to get those all activated and then start planning your project, which is a whole nother webinar. And then I'll just put this up here. The full proposal, there's a number of elements. There's 11 required elements and potentially a 12th one, depending on whether you're doing research with or you're doing a collaboration with a research institute. And then there's some other optional documents. But again, this would be a whole nother webinar or two. So if you're preparing a submission to NSF, you want to get started early. You want to confirm your eligibility, all those eligibilities for SBIR, right? You want to get all the documents that you're going to need to get yourself registered, get that sam.gov registration activated. When you go to research.gov, you can create a research.gov membership registration. Sorry, but you can't submit a proposal. When you click on the section within research.gov to submit a proposal, if you don't have an active SAM registration, then you're not going to be able to create a proposal. So you can only get so far without an active SAM registration. You're going to need to submit that project pitch to figure out whether it's a good fit or not. And then you're going to need to submit that full proposal within your designated deadline. There are no grace periods. If your pitch expires because you either missed the window or if you got a fast track, and you did it 4 months in 1 day, then you're going to have to start all over and get a new pitch approved. And so you want to get started early and stay on top of the schedule. With that, I will take questions. It's a little bit after 1 o'clock, and we'll stick around for as many questions that are in here. And I see 9 already. Elizabeth, you want me to just start taking these?
Yeah, sure. We have about 9 questions at the moment, and if you just want to go through all of them, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. First, Jeff. Must we do all phases through this program? My software has already a proof of concept and is actively in use in partnership with local and state government. Probably not going to be a good fit at NSF, but it's, depending on what you're proposing, if there's still some risks, technical risks of your program, trying to implement your program, then they may consider it. Now, other agencies are like defense in particular, they like to see a bit more mature technology. And if there's a defense application of your software, then they might be interested in it. But at NSF, yes, you have to go through phase 1 and phase 2. And in NSF, they're going to want to see a kind of a science problem that you're trying to solve. All right, Parker. This is where I am now. We have proof of concept on the product. We are at phase 2 according to what you just said. Sounds like it. Again, a project pitch is a pretty light lift. And so it's depending on what you still may have to develop your technology and your software. There could be a fit there. So I'll just leave it at that. Victoria, what if the tech was developed in 2 parts? One part has been completed at the university and now looking to commercialize, and the second part at another university now in development. Yeah, you can certainly have partnerships with multiple universities, depending on whether it's SBIR, you can split it up between 2 universities, and as long as it's less than 33.0% of the budget, then you could still involve both universities in an SBIR. If it's going to be more than 33% of the budget, then you're going to have, which right now is like 100,000. I don't know the exact number. I don't have it memorized yet, but it's going to be a third. It's roughly a third. 33.0% of 300,000 is going to be a little over 100,000. But if it's going to be more than that, then you can go to STTR, and then you could, as long as one of them gets 30% and then the other one maybe 10%, or all the way up to 30%. They could do 30, and then the company has to do 40%. Then it would be, you can work with multiple universities. It becomes complicated because everybody's going to, whoops, I hit the wrong thing there. You're going to have intellectual property discussions, and each university is going to probably claim ownership, and so you're going to can get complicated. But yes, you can do it. Right? And if that didn't answer the question, then shoot me another. Is blockchain technology on the list? Absolutely. Yes, blockchain is for sure. It's a topic of its own. You're going to have to explain what's new about your blockchain technology, what's unproven, not just adapting what's existing in the blockchain world. But yes, absolutely, blockchain. And we've had several companies get awards under that topic. Can I explain how work is split for joint ventures in phase one? Does each company have to do 50% of the work, or can there be another split? So you can have a joint venture. What would happen in that situation is the applicant small business must do at least 67% of the budget effort. And so so in this case, it's going to be a little over 200,000, or right around 200,000. And then you could, the joint venture could do the other third, or 33.0%. So as long as that works, then you can do joint ventures in that sense, because then you can outsource. It doesn't have to be to a research institute. It could be another private company. So yeah, that could absolutely work. All right. Are there any real? This is Evgeny. Are there any of these realistic options for single person business? Yeah, absolutely. We have had several companies at the time of application. Nobody was employed by the company. And then when they got their phase one award, there was only one person working on it during phase one. Now, what NSF is going to want to see is that in the course of the phase one, they're adding people to this team to be able to commercialize. So I've never seen a single entity get a phase two award because there's too much to do, and there's too much commercial. If you're serious about commercializing, one person can't do it. One person can juggle a phase one, but it becomes problematic. So yeah, I would say yes to phase one, but make sure that you've got a team that you're going to pull together for phase two. Okay, Victoria, clarify employed. Great question. So we're going to dive deep into the minutia here of a budget at NSF. This is true of any SBIR, not just NSF. At NSF, section 1 of your budget is key persons. Section 2 is other employees. That's where you're going to put your W-2 people. Okay, so they have to be W-2. They don't have to be full-time, but they have to be W-2. They can be part-time. Any 1099 is going to be considered a consultant for the sake of SBIR. And at NSF, that's in section G, as in golf, section G3. So, and some of the other agencies, it's a different section number because they label them different, but they're going to be considered a consultant, any 1099. Executive compensation, if you're doing bonuses and options and all that, doesn't get counted until later. So what I would recommend is, describing your team and how you're compensating and how you're going to keep them engaged in the project. Okay, hopefully that answered that question. All right. Phil, are these funding programs, SBIR and STTR, forms of loans as the business takes off for profit? No, these are not loans. These are direct grants, and the revenue is treated as income. So you're a for-profit company. You have to be for-profit. You're going to get, if you get a phase 1 award, you're going to get $305,000. Let's say it's all in one fiscal year for your company. Then you're going to have $305,000 in revenue, and you're probably going to have more than that in expenses. Trust me, I've done enough phase 1 proposals over the years when I was in small business, and we rarely, didn't lose money on them. In other words, we invested more than the phase 1 award amount. So you're going to have revenue. It's treated as income for a for-profit. And so it is not a loan. Now, the nice thing about it is it's not dilutive. In other words, the government doesn't take any equity position, nor do they want, a seat on your board or any control. They're just going to give you the money, expect that you do something with it that's going to advance science and hopefully produce this technology, but it is not a loan. Fayez, if your project doesn't meet these topics, can you still apply? At NSF, as long as there's a science problem, then you can fit. If you don't fit in one of their 30 specific topical areas, there's 31, which says other. And so you would fit into that topic. Now, if you're applying to a different agency, then each agency has their own topical restrictions. Some, if you don't meet it, then they're not going to accept it. But at NSF, they will basically take anything. So you would be able to match. Patricia, if I develop a novel product and need a small human study in order to show proof of concept, can I use a CRO to do the study? Yes, absolutely. You can do that. Again, it comes into this 67.033 for SBIR mix. So as long as it's 33% or less, then you could do it under SBIR. If it were STTR, then you'd have to have a research organization, which a CRO probably isn't going to qualify because it's typically CROs are for-profit. But if you had a university or national lab, and then you could also farm out to a CRO, yes. So that would not fall under your percentage. A CRO would be considered, you're hiring somebody outside to do your R&D. So that would have to be within the 33 or the STTR limits. So yeah. Devin, hi. We are a minority microchip company specializing in advanced packaging and testing. We would like to improve the chiplet process. As your opinion would say, we would have an opportunity submitting phase 1. Not sure. I think what you're going to have to do is show that there's new technology, there's unproven technology or processes that you're proposing in this chiplet process. But if it's unproven, if it's not generally accepted, and it's going to give you a competitive advantage, then yeah, NSF would certainly be interested in this new chiplet process. If it's more of an adaptation of existing, then it's in a gray area and they may not. Boris, how many times can a small business receive funding from SBIR if you have the same PI and NIH and NSF, but different projects from different fields? You can apply to multiple agencies and get multiple awards. The business I was at one time, I think the maximum we had was 8 different phase 2s from 3 different agencies. The rules about this are the principal investigator Well, at NSF, you're only going to have one award. Okay, they rarely will make a second award to the same company, and they will not award a second award to the same principal investigator. That said, you can have, as long as your PI has, like if they're doing 25% at one project and 25% on a second, and they couldn't do 25% on 5 projects because that's 125%. They won't allow that. But as long as they have, they're not oversubscribed, then the PI is going to be fine. In terms of applying to multiple different agencies, yes, you can. As long as the scope of work is different, you cannot get paid twice to do the same scope of work. But as long as you split up the scope of work, then you can receive multiple awards from multiple agencies. And that PI could work on multiple proposals as long as he or she doesn't get over 100% of their time. And they're gonna say their time is limited to 40 hours a week. All right, anonymous. Is it possible to submit a proposal that has already been done instead of a project pitch? Not sure exactly what you're asking there, but at NSF, you have to have a project pitch approved. It will be tied to a specific project pitch that you submitted. And that project pitch is going to describe, the technology and the objectives that you're needing to reach to prove feasibility. That pitch will be approved, and that full proposal must tie to that project pitch. So can it change a little bit? Sure. But you couldn't say, all right, I submit a project pitch for software, for example, and then submit a proposal for a medical device. That won't fly. But if you say software and it changes a little bit between, when you submitted the pitch and the full proposal, that's fine. Is there common application across all agencies? Nope. They are all different. All 11 agencies have their own submission process, their own submission requirements, their own submission portals. There's a couple exceptions where grants.gov is used by more than one agency, but even within grants.gov, the forms within grants.gov are different between the SBIR agencies. So unfortunately, no, you're stuck with dealing with each agency, which gives somebody like me something to do because we have to keep track of 11 different agencies. Okay, Yin Sun. I need EE and ME, but do not have them in the team. Okay. And when the funds come in, they will be part-time. Should I propose them as consultants or employees? Great question. It's a business decision on your part. But I would say probably if these are key people, you're probably going to want to have them listed in your section A, which is W-2. And particularly at NSF, they're going to want to see that you've got people that are committed to the team and committed to commercializing this technology. So I would lean towards employees. But if they're just doing some ancillary work, then they may be a consultant, and that's okay too. Is AI covered as a topic? Yes, the NSF has an AI topic, but again, you're going to have to show what's new about your AI, not just an adaptation of existing. Last question. I know we got 1 minute left. If we get one project awarded at NIH, could we submit a different proposal to NSF with the same PI? Yes, is the answer. You can do that. As long as it's a different scope of work, yes, you could do that.
That was a lot of
questions. Got there.
You did good, Jerry. You did good. Covered everything in time, and we're good. Thank you so much for everything. I think we had about 70 plus people join. I hope everyone got a whole lot of new information as well. So thank you so much. I will share my screen and just quickly do my conclusion. Let's see. I do want to go over how our tech team operates. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Give me one moment. Okay. So the first thing I do want to share is our webpage that I had talked about earlier, njsbdc.com/tech team. You've seen it on our slides as well. This is the page that you go to if you would like to receive counseling. This is where you request our support. It will explain in detail what the tech team does. We basically help provide counseling services to any innovators and small business owners, whether you're in the early stage or you are in phase 1, phase 2, whichever it is, we can help you with that. We do prioritize New Jersey small business owners and innovators, residents. If you are from outside of New Jersey, then please go to your own state's FAST program, your own SBDC, or whichever organization takes part in the FAST program. Let's see, one-to-one consulting, the webinars that you attended, pitch your proposal, federal agency best practices webinar, pre-submission panel reviews. We haven't done one this year, but is in the works and will be happening soon, and proposal writing assistance. We do have our team. You can see who our team is on our page, some of our testimonials and success stories and educational series, all that we've done in the past. Please go and visit our YouTube channel and you'll find them. One more thing I do want to share. How would you apply or how do you get counseling from the NJSBDC? Once you request counseling, you will be entered and registered into our database, our ICE system. And once you are in there, we will ask you to complete a quick form. This is a Google form. This is intended to make sure you're eligible for federal SBIR STTR grants. So just to see if you meet the eligibility requirements, not just set by us, but by the SBA. Match you with an appropriate NJSBDC tech consultant. So if you are eligible, then we'll move past that and we'll look at your area of need, the counseling that you're requesting, and then we'll assign you a proper tech consultant, an appropriate tech consultant who will be able to help you. If you have a proposal ready, we won't write anything for you. We're not grant writers, but we will definitely provide line-by-line review, for which we also have a proposal writing program. There is the press release that was launched in July. You can read all the information here. If you are ready for the proposal writing program, for which there are 10 seats available, and I believe 4 or 5 are already filled, then we'll do our best to accommodate that and approve you to be then passed off onto Jerry and Jerry's team. All right. That is what I need to share. If you have any questions, please reach out. Upcoming webinars, Thursday, September 19th, strategies for managing toxic behavior in the workplace. This is happening next Thursday at the same time as always. Transform workplace challenges into opportunities for growth and success. If this is something that you are interested in or have family, friends, small business owners that you know may be interested in, definitely refer this to them. And that is all for today. We've helped tech team. The tech team has helped many innovators grow in the past 2 years that we have. This team has been in existence, excuse me. If you'd like to learn more, go to the webpage that I showed you. Again, thank you to Jerry and his team. Thank you to our webinar assistant. Thank you all for attending. We hope to see you next time.